Before the Galactic Council learned what humanity truly was, a warm voice echoed through the broadcast feed that carried the hearing across 10,000 systems. If you're watching this transmission, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Galactic Inquiry Network. We bring you the truth the high races don't want you to see. The message flickered across every screen before dissolving into the cavernous chamber where humanity would be judged. Captain Elias Ward stepped forward as the floating platform stabilized. His stride was unhurried, deliberate, as though the weight of planetary scrutiny failed to touch him. His dark uniform absorbed the pale iridescence cast by the chamber's crystalline walls, giving him the appearance of a lone shadow cutting through a sea of shimmering light. He kept his hands clasped behind him, a posture of disciplined silence rather than submission. The Galactic Council towered above him in elevated rings, each delegate suspended on gravitic supports. Dozens of species observed humanity with expressions ranging from thinly veiled amusement to open contempt. Humans, after all, were not known for greatness, merely for surviving what they should not. That made them irritating, unpredictable, and today highly controversial. The presiding magistrate, a serpentine Yurvan with translucent skin that pulsed with shifting colors, curled its long fingers together. "Human representative," it hissed, "your presence has been requested for clarification regarding an anomaly." Elias lifted his gaze to meet the magistrate's opalescent eyes. He neither flinched nor bowed, though both were customary. "I am prepared to address the council's concerns." Murmurs rippled through the delegates, soft but unmistakably derisive. The magistrate gestured toward a hovering hologram disc. The chamber dimmed as the projection activated. Static shimmered across the air before coalescing into the image of an enormous, obsidian-scaled creature. Its posture was rigid, powerful, and unmistakably predatory. Even in holographic form, the creature radiated the kind of primal fear that hollowed the stomach and froze the lungs. Vorka. The species that turned battlefields into carnage and turned entire fleets into silent wreckage. No one in the chamber had ever seen one subdued. Most never survived a close encounter. But that was not the anomaly. The hologram shifted, showing the monstrous being stepping forward, then lowering itself onto one knee. Its head bowed. Its claws pressed against the ground in a gesture no council member had ever documented. "Why?" the magistrate said, voice trembling through its slitted throat. "Did an apex predator kneel to a human?" The projection vanished. The chamber brightened. Silence followed, tense, suffocating, accusing. Elias didn't immediately respond. The truth itself was simple. Explaining it would be anything but. Across the chamber, delegates exchanged glances laden with doubt. The armored Keshratan ambassador leaned forward, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Our analysts insist this recording must be falsified," he snapped. "A Vorkan does not kneel. Not to conquerors, not to gods, and certainly not to fragile primates." Elias let the insult pass without reaction. He'd heard variations of it all day and throughout humanity's entire entry into the council's political sphere. "The footage is genuine," he said. A low growl of disapproval rippled among the delegates. The magistrate's skin shifted into deep crimson, Yurvan coloration for suspicion. "Then explain it. Explain the nature of this submission." Elias inhaled, slow and measured, the faint taste of sterile recycled air filling his lungs. The council wanted clarity. What they would receive was context, just not the kind they expected. "It happened," he said, "because humans are not what the council believes." A collective scoff swept through the upper tiers. He continued before anyone could interrupt. "You assume physical frailty equals weakness. You assume that adaptability is desperation. You assume the apex predators of your nightmares would never acknowledge us because you overlooked the trait humanity values most." The magistrate tilted its head. "And what trait is that?" "Understanding," Elias said. "The willingness to see a monster as something more than a threat. Or a trophy. Or an experiment." "That," snapped an avian delegate, "is philosophy, not explanation." Elias's jaw tightened. His calm never broke, yet there was weight behind his next words. "Then let me be direct. The Vorkan did not kneel out of defeat. It knelt out of recognition. And the one it recognized was not a soldier. It was a man of science." A hush washed over the chamber. "State his name," the magistrate demanded. "Dr. Cale Mercer," Elias replied. "Xenobiologist." The name echoed through speaker nodes in a dozen dialects. None recognized it. None expected significance. That was precisely the point. Elias took a single step closer to the center of the chamber, drawing every eye toward him. Dr. Mercer encountered the Vorcan under circumstances I will describe fully. But what matters for this hearing is simple. He earned something your empires have sought for centuries. Not by force. Not by fear. He paused, letting the quiet edge into anticipation. He earned respect. The word echoed across the vast chamber, reshaping the silence that followed. It was not applause. It was not acceptance. But it was attention, focused, sharp, and unwilling to look away. The magistrate leaned forward, its eyes narrowing. Then you will explain how such an impossibility occurred. Elias nodded once. I will. And for the first time since he'd entered the chamber, the murmurs were no longer mocking. They were wary, curious, unsettled. The moment held a quiet tension, a promise of revelation balanced on a razor's edge. Elias knew they were ready, if not to believe him, then at least to listen. And listening was enough. Listening was where truths began. He drew a breath, steady and final. It started, he said, on a quarantined moon where no one expected to find anything alive. The chamber leaned in as one. And the story began. The wind on the quarantined moon did not howl, it scraped. It carried flecks of metallic dust that clattered against armor plating like brittle teeth. Dr. Cale Mercer tightened the seals on his exosuit as he surveyed the barren terrain stretching beneath a sickly green sky. Not a plant. Not an insect. Not a sound besides the rasping wind. This world had been emptied long before his team arrived. Captain Elias Ward stood beside him, visor reflecting the dull horizon. Scans still show residual thermal signatures, he said. Whatever did this might still be nearby. Cale adjusted the scanner on his wrist, watching erratic spikes dance across the interface. Residual is an understatement. Something moved through here recently. Something large. His voice carried the restrained excitement of a man who valued discovery more than safety. The team advanced through a corridor of shattered equipment. Broken transports lay cracked open, their hulls torn apart as though by blades thicker than a man's torso. Blackened impact marks punctured the ground, and long gouges carved through stone suggested the passage of something unfathomably strong. Cale crouched beside a twisted section of plating, brushing dust away to reveal scorch patterns. Vorcan claw signatures, he murmured. But different. Uneven spacing. Smaller than the usual specimens. Elias knelt beside him. Small doesn't mean safer. I didn't say it did. The deeper they moved into the ravaged outpost, the more the ruins told the story of a desperate, futile retreat. Containment walls reinforced with alloy composites had been sheared as if they were soft polymer. Observational towers collapsed inward, crushed rather than toppled. Whatever happened had unfolded with terrifying speed. Cale paused as his scanner flared bright red. A heartbeat. Faint but unmistakable. Elias, Cale whispered, we're not alone. The captain signaled the team to raise shields. Plasma rifles hummed to life. But Cale stepped past them, ignoring the unease that rippled through the squad. The signature came from inside a collapsed bunker half buried beneath debris. Chunks of steel leaned at impossible angles, forming a jagged cocoon around a narrow entrance. Cale squeezed through first despite Elias's warning glare. Inside, the dim light revealed a cavern of warped supports and dangling cables. The metallic scent of blood clung to the air. In the far corner something shifted. Cale lifted his wrist light. The beam revealed a creature hunched against the wall, breathing in ragged bursts. Its scales, obsidian and fractured, were slick with a deep blue ichor that pooled beneath it. Its limbs were curled inward, talons trembling. A Vorcan, yes, but younger than expected. Not the towering juggernauts from the council archives. This one was smaller, leaner, still formidable enough to snap any man in half. Elias raised his weapon. Cale. Step back. The creature's eyes snapped open. Twin rings of burning amber fixed on Cale with predatory clarity. It lunged. Cale didn't retreat. He lifted his hands and held his ground as a roar filled the bunker, shaking dust loose from the ceiling. The creature didn't reach him. Its body collapsed midway, crashing against the metal floor with a guttural snarl of pain. Its muscles spasmed violently and Cale recognized the signs instantly. It's been poisoned, he said. Something systemic. Fast spreading. Elias shot him a look like disbelief and frustration had fused into one expression. Poisoned or not, it can still kill you. It won't, Cale replied, stepping closer. On what evidence? Elias demanded. Cale knelt beside the creature. On the fact that it hasn't tried again. The Vorcan's breath rattled like broken machinery. It lifted its head weakly, watching him with a conflicted mixture of fury and confusion. Kale spoke softly, not in their language but with the even cadence he used when calming volatile specimens. "I can help you," he said. "If you let me." Elias clenched his fists but didn't intervene. He'd known Kale long enough to recognize the look, an unshakable conviction that bordered on recklessness but had saved lives more than once. Kale pulled a vial from his kit. Its bloodstream is rejecting something. Probably a synthetic toxin deployed by the scouts here. He drew a sample of the creature's blood, scanned it and confirmed his suspicion. "I can counter it but I need to act now." Elias exhaled through his teeth. "Do it." The procedure was harrowing. The toxin had spread through the Vorkan's arteries in branching black tendrils visible beneath translucent sections of scale. Kale injected the counter-agent in 3 precise locations, each delivering a stabilizing surge of bionanites. The creature's body jerked with each injection, claws scraping furrows into the floor. Its breath shifted from violent spasms to low, controlled grunts. When Kale finished he sat back, pulse racing. "It'll either recover, or kill us once it can stand." Elias positioned himself between Kale and the creature. "If it attacks we shoot." Kale nodded, though he doubted the rifles would do more than irritate it. Minutes passed. The bunker settled into silence but for the steady drip of ichor. The Vorkan's breathing smoothed, deepened, then gradually stabilized. Its talons unfurled from their tight curl. Its posture shifted. It rose, not fully but enough to lift its head. Kale tensed but didn't retreat. The creature looked at him with a new, unsettling awareness. Not instinct. Not hunger. Something else. Slowly, with deliberate control that suggested enormous effort, the Vorkan braced one arm against the ground and lowered itself until one knee touched the floor. Its head bowed. Elias stepped forward incredulously. "Is it kneeling?" Kale couldn't answer. He could only stare at the creature that should have torn him apart but now lowered itself as though acknowledging something sacred. The Vorkan pressed its clawed hand against the ground, chest heaving with a sound that wasn't a growl but a declaration. Kale understood nothing of its language, but he understood the intention. It wasn't surrender. It was allegiance. And that was when Kale realized the council would never believe what happened next. But Elias would. He stepped closer, voice low with reluctant awe. "Kale, what did you just do?" Kale swallowed. Something the galaxy wasn't prepared for. And outside, the wind scraped across the barren world as though marking the moment history shifted. The Vorkan remained kneeling long after its strength returned, as though tethered to the moment Kale had saved its life. Its amber eyes followed his movements with unwavering precision, absorbing every gesture, every breath, as though he were a puzzle it had never expected to encounter. Kale approached cautiously, mindful that the creature's reverence did not neutralize the lethal power it still possessed. He extended a hand not to touch but to test. The creature lowered its head again, a motion so deliberate it seemed ritualistic. Elias watched from behind with a stern frown, arms crossed, mind wrestling with a reality that refused to fit inside the boundaries of military logic. "It's waiting," Kale said quietly. "For what?" Elias asked. "For me to acknowledge it." Elias stepped forward. "Acknowledge it how? Like a pet? Like an ally?" Kale shook his head. "No. Like something that understands obligation." The Vorkan raised its gaze, locking eyes with Kale. The creature's stare carried a depth that unsettled him, not the cold cunning of a predator but the profound intensity of something that recognized intention more than species. Kale spoke calmly. "Do you understand me?" The creature responded with a guttural sound, a rumbling chord layered with emotion rather than language. It pressed its claw to its chest, then touched the ground before him. The gesture was foreign yet unmistakably significant. Elias leaned in. "What does that mean?" "I think," Kale said, exhaling slowly, "it means I'm responsible for it now." "That's not a responsibility anyone should accept," Elias muttered. "Especially on a moon where it slaughtered an entire scouting team." Kale didn't disagree. But he couldn't ignore the way the creature now mirrored his movements with uncanny precision. Whatever the Vorkan were, this one was operating by rules he didn't yet understand. He retrieved a med scanner and held it toward the creature. "If you'll let me, I want to assess your recovery." The Vorkan extended its arm without hesitation. Elias muttered something under his breath. "That's not obedience. That's devotion." The scanner hummed softly, projecting a hologram of the creature's internal systems. The toxin had nearly consumed it, spreading through its veins like a shadow. If Kale had hesitated even minutes longer, it would have died in agony. Kale lowered the device. You're stable. The Vorkan emitted a low, resonant exhale that vibrated through the bunker. It sounded almost like relief. When the creature rose to full height, Elias grabbed his rifle instinctively. The Vorkan stood taller than either of them, its silhouette massive in the cramped space. But instead of advancing, it turned slightly and pointed toward the exit with its chin. Kale stepped toward the opening. It wants us to follow. Elias hissed a whisper. Do we trust that? Kale considered the question. We trust that it doesn't want to die again. The Vorkan led them through the ruins, navigating past collapsed beams and shattered armor with careful steps. Every few meters, it glanced back to confirm Kale was still following. It ignored Elias entirely. They emerged into the blistering wind. The sun hovered low on the horizon, casting jagged shadows across the desolate terrain. The creature paused, tilting its head toward the distant ridge where dark storm clouds churned. Kale adjusted his visor. Something's out there. Elias scanned the horizon. Movement. Fast. The ground trembled, not violently but rhythmically as though massive steps approached from far away. Kale's pulse quickened. The Vorkan's posture shifted instantly from passive reverence to predatory readiness. Its muscles coiled, its eyes narrowed, and a low growl rumbled from deep within its chest. Elias steadied his rifle. Another one? Kale's scanner pulsed with fresh readings. No. Something bigger. The Vorkan stepped in front of Kale, claws flexing, shoulders squared to shield him. The gesture was unmistakable, protection offered without hesitation. Elias stared, stunned by the creature's instinctive prioritization. Kale spoke softly. It won't run. It won't need to, Elias said, gripping his weapon. Neither will we. The tremors grew louder, closer. Dust billowed across the horizon. Kale braced himself for another Vorkan, an adult perhaps, something far beyond their capability to restrain. But the ground-shaking presence never appeared. Instead, the tremors faded as abruptly as they'd begun. Elias frowned. It was a warning. Kale nodded. Not aimed at us. The Vorkan relaxed, lowering its arms. It turned toward Kale and issued another deep sound, this one softer, resonant with meaning. Kale listened, not to comprehend the words but the emotion beneath them. It's telling us, it's alone, he murmured. And whatever killed the others is still out there. Elias's voice dropped. Then why stay with us? Kale studied the creature as the wind tugged at the edges of its fractured scales. The Vorkan leaned forward, pressing its forehead lightly to Kale's shoulder in a gesture that startled him into stillness. He whispered, because I saved it. Elias exhaled, long and slow, realization settling over him like cold ash. Vorkan culture isn't recorded anywhere. We don't know their rituals or their hierarchy. That kneeling, it wasn't random. Kale turned toward him. Then find out what it means. Elias shook his head. I think it means you're not its captor. You're its claim. Before Kale could respond, the creature straightened and pointed toward the sky. Above them, a distant streak of blue light cut across the atmosphere, an incoming vessel. Elias checked the frequency. Recon ship. Council markings. Kale's breath tightened. They're here for the same reason we came. Elias's expression hardened. To collect evidence. Or to eliminate it. The Vorkan watched the descending ship, its jaw tightening into a snarl. It positioned itself beside Kale, ready to confront whatever arrived. Kale stood between Elias and the creature, suddenly aware of the fragile balance forming around him. A soldier, a scientist, and a predator whose loyalty no one would understand. Elias lowered his rifle slightly, his voice low. Kale. Whatever happens next, this isn't just a discovery anymore. No, Kale said, eyes fixed on the landing vessel. It's the beginning of a conflict the Council isn't prepared for. The ship touched down with a blast of sand and metallic dust. The Vorkan stepped closer to Kale, its presence solid and unyielding. And in that moment, Kale understood the truth. He hadn't simply saved a life. He had altered the balance of the galaxy. And now others were coming to claim it. The council chamber felt smaller than it had hours earlier, though its architecture remained vast and crystalline. What shrank was the confidence of the delegates. Rakta, the young Vorkan, stood in the center of the room with chains wrapped around his limbs, yet the restraints looked ceremonial rather than functional. Everyone in the chamber understood one truth. If the creature wished to break free, nothing forged by their combined civilizations could prevent it. Kale stood beside him, close enough to feel the faint heat emanating from the predator's armored skin. Elias flanked them both, expression carved into the unreadable calm of a man ready to defend with words or violence, whichever the moment required. The magistrate's translucent skin flickered with shifting colors that betrayed agitation. "Explain again," it demanded, "why this being follows you rather than resuming its natural instincts." Kale kept his voice steady. "Because instincts aren't all it has. It made a choice." "A choice?" scoffed a crystalline ambassador whose body refracted the chamber lights into jagged lines. "Vorkan do not make choices. They react." Rakta turned its head and fixed the ambassador with a stare so intense the creature recoiled, crystalline limbs clattering like wind chimes struck by a storm. Kale gently pressed a hand to Rakta's forearm, a small gesture meant to anchor rather than restrain. The Vorkan stilled immediately. That single moment silenced the chamber. Elias stepped forward. "With respect, your assumptions about the Vorkan are based on incomplete data. No one has ever documented one interacting socially outside of combat. Until now." The magistrate narrowed its gaze. "And you claim this interaction proves humanity is formidable?" "I claim," Elias said, "that your definitions of strength are outdated." The chamber murmured with irritation, but the magistrate raised a hand. Silence returned. "Continue." Kale drew a slow breath. "Rakta bonded to me after I saved its life. The kneeling gesture you saw, it wasn't submission. It was a vow." A deep rumble vibrated the air. Rakta lifted its head and spoke, words broken but unmistakably deliberate. "Life-giver. Kale Mercer. My oath is sworn." The chamber recoiled collectively. Some delegates shifted back on their platforms. Others raised protective barriers. A few whispered frantically into communicators. The idea of an apex predator speaking their shared tongue was terrifying enough. The idea of it speaking to protect a human was unthinkable. The magistrate hissed. "You taught it language?" Kale shook his head. "No. It listened. It learned. Its mind is more complex than we believed." Elias stepped beside him, voice hardening. "This is not manipulation. This is recognition. And that recognition is directed toward humanity." The Keshratan ambassador slammed a clawed hand against its platform. "This alliance is unnatural. Dangerous." Rakta reacted instantly. It stepped in front of Kale, teeth bared, eyes blazing with the primal promise of violence. The Keshratan froze, mandibles trembling in sudden uncertainty. Kale placed a hand over Rakta's chest, steadying him with the simplest possible command. "Enough." The Vorkan obeyed, lowering its head. The chamber watched in stunned silence as the apex predator folded beneath Kale's touch like a storm yielding to a whispered request. Elias addressed them again. "You fear this because it contradicts your assumptions. Humans aren't dominant through force. We've never claimed to be. We adapt. We empathize. We build connections where others see only threats." The magistrate's colors flickered rapidly. "And what do you expect the council to do with this anomaly?" Kale exhaled. "See it for what it is, a bridge. Proof that the galaxy's most feared species is capable of change." The crystalline ambassador hissed. "Or proof that humans can weaponize anything." The accusation cut the air like a blade. Rakta tensed, but Kale's calming hand prevented escalation. A sudden whir of movement broke the tension. From an upper platform, a cloaked figure leapt forward, aiming a weapon directly at Kale. The shot burst into a streak of violet energy. Elias moved, but Rakta moved faster. The Vorkan lunged, intercepting the blast with the armored plate of his shoulder. A burst of smoke and scorched ozone flooded the chamber. Rakta staggered but didn't fall. Instead, he roared, a sound that shook the chamber's foundations and sent two delegates crashing backward. Security swarmed the attacker, dragging the figure into restraints. The magistrate's colors blazed with outrage. "Assassination," it hissed, in a council chamber. Kale stepped to Rakta's side, checking the burn wound. The creature growled softly, not in pain but in frustration that it could not tear the attacker apart. Elias glared at the council. "This is why humans survive. Not by being the strongest, but by refusing to break no matter the assault." Kale added quietly, "And because we protect those who protect us regardless of species." The room shifted. The fear remained, but it mingled now with something else, uneasy respect. Rakta straightened slowly, placing his uninjured hand over his chest, staring directly at the magistrate. "Human Kale lives. I stand." It wasn't a threat. It was a declaration. One the chamber could not easily dismiss. The magistrate's next words came slowly, as though carved from reluctant stone. "The council will deliberate." Elias placed a firm hand on Kale's shoulder. This isn't over. Kale nodded, gaze drifting to Rakta. No. But for the first time, they're listening. The chamber lights dimmed as the delegates withdrew into private sectors, leaving the three of them alone beneath the vast crystalline dome. And just before the final light faded, Kale realized something unsettling. The attack had been only the first move. The real conflict was just beginning. The council chamber was quiet now, though the echoes of Rakta's roar lingered in the crystalline walls. Outside, the city spires of the galactic capital shimmered beneath twin suns, unaware of the seismic shift unfolding within their political heart. Kale Mercer stood beside Rakta, eyes scanning the empty platforms as though expecting the next threat to appear from the shadows. Elias Ward's hand rested lightly on the hilt of his sidearm, not in readiness to fire, but as a silent promise that he would act if diplomacy failed. The magistrate returned, moving with slow deliberation. Its translucent skin pulsed with muted colors, a deliberate display of authority tempered by caution. The council has considered your actions human, it said, and the behavior of your ally. Rakta stepped forward, lowering its head slightly in a gesture that seemed both deferential and protective. Kale's hand brushed the creature's forearm instinctively, a tether of reassurance and understanding. The predator's amber eyes reflected a depth of emotion Kale had never expected to see in any being: fear, loyalty, and quiet judgment. You claim your species is not weak, the magistrate continued, that you can command loyalty from an apex predator. And yet your fleets are small. Your colonies limited. Your technology, primitive compared to even lower-tier species. Kale did not flinch. Strength, he said, voice calm but firm, is not measured in numbers or firepower. It is measured in adaptability, in courage, and in the bonds we form, bonds that transcend fear, instinct, or brute force. Rakta kneels not because I dominate it, but because it recognizes a life worth defending. A murmur ran through the empty platforms. Even absent observers, the weight of Kale's words pressed on the chamber like gravity. Elias stepped forward, voice low but carrying across the space. The council has underestimated humanity for millennia. We survive where others fail. We endure where others flee. We rise when the galaxy believes we cannot. And yes, he glanced at Rakta, we can earn the loyalty of the most lethal beings alive. The magistrate's gaze flickered, processing the claim. Kale watched closely, noting the subtle shifts in its hue, an alien indicator of consideration, perhaps even respect. You risked life, limb, and future standing to protect this creature, the magistrate said. And in doing so you have proven something. Yet the galaxy is not easily swayed. Kale stepped forward, shoulders squared. Then let the galaxy learn. At that moment, the chamber's doors opened with a hiss of pressurized seals. Security droids and council delegates filed in, faces tight with suspicion. A delegation of crystalline and serpentine species moved cautiously toward the center, whispering among themselves. Kale's pulse quickened, not with fear but anticipation. Every movement was a test, every glance a calculation. Rakta shifted subtly, shoulders coiling like a spring, ready to respond to the faintest provocation. One of the delegates, a long-limbed Keshratan, snapped its mandibles. Your claim is audacious, human. You dare suggest we recognize your species as equals? Kale's gaze hardened. I dare because it is true. The Keshratan lunged toward the central platform, claws extended and energy pulses igniting along its forelimbs. In an instant Rakta reacted. Its movement was a blur, faster than any council guard, faster than any weapon could track. The predator slammed into the Keshratan, absorbing its initial assault and driving the attacker back with a force that rattled the entire chamber. Sparks flew from the mandibles as Rakta pinned the creature without delivering fatal blows, demonstrating control rather than mindless aggression. Kale's voice rang out, steady and commanding. Enough. The Vorken froze at the word, eyes flicking toward him. The Keshratan struggled beneath Rakta's restraint, realizing it was outmatched yet alive. Every delegate in the chamber understood then that the apex predator's loyalty was absolute, but tempered by Kale's guidance. Elias stepped forward, voice carrying over the murmurs. This is what humanity can do. We endure, we adapt, and we command respect, not through fear alone but through understanding and courage. Rakta's oath is not a weapon, it is a testament. And we stand ready to prove it to the galaxy. The chamber's ambient lighting dimmed as if acknowledging the weight of his words. The magistrate's skin shifted to a pale, almost luminescent blue. It exhaled slowly, the subtle sound like wind over metal. Perhaps, Your species is not as weak as we have assumed, it said. Perhaps your methods are alien, but the results are undeniable. Rakta lowered its head completely, chest pressing against the floor in a gesture of final respect. Kale's hand hovered above it, a tether, a promise, a silent acknowledgement of shared destiny. The predator had chosen, and that choice would ripple through every system that had ever dismissed humanity as fragile. Elias's voice broke the silence. And yet, this is only the beginning. You've seen a glimpse of what we can inspire. Imagine what we can achieve when pushed to our limits. The magistrate considered this, then gestured toward the council doors. Humanity will be reclassified. Your species will be observed closely, for the potential you wield is both remarkable and dangerous. Kale's eyes met Rakta's. The predator's amber gaze held centuries of instinct tempered by trust, and in that moment Kale understood the full weight of what they had accomplished. It was more than survival. More than loyalty. It was proof that the galaxy had underestimated the wrong species. A sudden alarm sounded, red flares cascading through the chamber. Kale's pulse spiked. He turned, scanning the corridors. Outside, shadows moved with speed, striking at the council's outer perimeter. Mercenaries, long thought neutral, were attempting an assault on the building. Their arrival confirmed what Kale had suspected all along. The galaxy would not yield control so easily. Rakta stepped to Kale's side, stance tense, muscles coiled, ready to leap into the fray. Elias drew his sidearm, eyes sharp and calculating. We face them together, he said. Kale nodded. Together. The doors burst open. Energy weapons discharged in arcs of violet and gold. Rakta launched forward, a blur of claw and scale, intercepting each strike with controlled precision. Kale moved in tandem, directing the predator's force while targeting the attackers with surgical accuracy. Elias covered their flank, suppressing the intruders with calm efficiency. The chamber became a ballet of survival, trust, and raw skill, with human and predator moving as a single unit. When the last attacker fell, silence reclaimed the chamber. Dust settled. Sparks sputtered. Rakta's chest heaved, yet it remained obediently beside Kale. Elias holstered his weapon, surveying the aftermath with a grim smile. Kale looked at the Vorkan. They feared us kneeling, he said softly. But they should have feared the species we kneel for. Rakta's growl rumbled in agreement. The chamber, once a place of judgment, now bore witness to something far more powerful. An alliance that transcended fear, instinct, and history itself. And as the council's lights dimmed in recognition, Kale knew one truth above all. Humanity had not only survived the test, it had rewritten the rules of power in the galaxy. The galaxy would never underestimate them again. And the war for acknowledgement had only just begun.